So I think that people in the feminist side of the camp really started this term toxic masculinity, and then there is of course a retaliation that happens, toxic femininity. Hello. So today I thought that we would go over a topic that somebody asked me. Some buzzwords that you have definitely heard are toxic masculinity, and from the opposing side you might have heard of toxic femininity. So what do I think about toxic masculinity and toxic femininity? And the short answer is I don't really subscribe to those terms at all. I don't really believe that masculinity is toxic. I don't believe that femininity is toxic. Now, when talking about men and women, there are traits that are more masculine and there are traits that are more feminine. Some attributes that you might attribute to masculinity might be things like ambition and confidence and aggression, assertiveness, and femininity might be associated more with things like communication and nurturing or having warmth. So yes, there are traits that are more masculine, there are traits that are more feminine. When we're talking about toxic masculinity, obviously we're talking about things like aggression, whether that be physical aggression or verbal or sexual aggression. When people ascribe this term, they talk about like mansplaining, like toxic men just have this entitlement about them that they know everything, that everything should just go their way, that they just have this entitlement that way because of that masculine confidence that they have. So I think that people in the feminist side of the camp really started this term toxic masculinity, and then there is of course a retaliation that happens, toxic femininity. On this side, you're going to have things like gossiping and employing more subterfuge and more subtle devices to get what you want, being manipulative. Another facet of toxic femininity, besides being manipulative, might be like being overly anxious or emotional, kind of that hysterics type of stereotype there. And certainly there are men who display these qualities, and certainly there are women who display these qualities. So in that sense, because there are men and women who display these traits, I understand where the term comes from, toxic masculinity, toxic femininity. When thinking about all of these traits, they developed in men and women for a reason. Obviously, men need the ability to be aggressive and to be dangerous, to put themselves forth to protect. They need to have confidence to go out in the workplace and be ambitious and slay those dragons, whether they be actually hunting in the woods or whether they just be the proverbial dragons of getting up every single day and doing something that they don't want to do. Women, likewise, have developed these traits with evolutionary function. Women need to be very attuned to the emotional state of everyone around them. They need to know what their status is within the group. They need to be sensitive to the needs of their children and husband. And women aren't going to use their fists to fight. They are going to use manipulation and backbiting and gossip. When thinking about it that way, maybe some of these things get out of hand, but I view them not as evil or toxic, but merely as evolutionary developments. Now, here is kind of another thought path that I take with this. Sometimes you might have a really aggressive woman who might like really get in your face and start yelling. She might actually use her fists and start pulling hair and throwing things and get very violent. Or sometimes you might have a man who displays more typically feminine traits. He might be really anxious and always complain or He might be spreading gossip about some of his coworkers to try to get ahead. And these are things that would typically be very feminine. So you can have women employing more masculine toxic traits and men displaying more of these negative feminine traits. So a man who might be displaying these more feminine attributes like gossiping to get ahead at the workplace, or a man who is very anxious and complains a lot, or maybe that anxiety makes him very timid and submissive. You wouldn't say that he's exhibiting toxic femininity. And same for the woman who might be like super ambitious career woman, or a woman who comes to blows easily and is very, very aggressive. You wouldn't say that she's displaying toxic masculinity, even though those are the toxic masculine traits. I should put toxic in air quotes. And he's not toxic feminine, even though he's displaying these toxic feminine traits. For those reasons, I don't really think in terms of toxic masculinity, toxic femininity. One thing that I think everybody can see right now is there is a very big divide between men and women. You know, some with all the politics and stuff nowadays, it kind of can feel like you are stuck and trapped on this middle school playground where girls go to college to get more knowledge and boys go to Jupiter to get more stupider, you know, where it's just like that kind of silly fighting between men and women. And of course, we're grown-ups, so we get a lot nastier and more aggressive about it. And a lot of my big thing is, I would say that I'm a complementarian. I think that men and women need each other, that they complement each other. For that reason also, I really dislike these terms, toxic masculinity, toxic femininity. I think that they just serve to divide the sexes even further, when my goal would be to bring them back together.